And then all of a sudden in 2018, I'm on the main stage playing. And that was just
surreal.
I cannot describe it. I cannot describe how it felt. It was just bizarre.
Headbangers. Hi, welcome back to the Headbangers podcast. I'm joined with Nathan today. Here today is Richard Shaw from Cradle of Filth. How are you doing? How's like the last year been for you in the crazy times?
I'm doing well, thanks. Yeah, it's just been weird. Like, not only have obviously everything's been put on hold in the music world, but I've become a dad. I've relocated, bought a house. I'm like adulting to the max, it seems, in the last year. It's crazy. Like, and it's weird. As a touring musician, I've been incredibly lucky to actually spend all this time with my son. He was born in September, and I don't know many touring musicians who have spent like the last 7 months, well, the first 7 months with their child. Because there's always a tour they've got to do or something they've got to do. So in a very strange way, I've got to thank COVID for allowing me the time off to spend with my son. Other than that, it has been pretty weird, like just being at home, not having a tour lined up or anything lined up at all. And life's been put on hold, which has been very bizarre.
No, absolutely. Well, it sounds like you've got some good stuff out of it there. You know, you've got to spend some time with your family. So I imagine, like, for a lot of musicians, that's the kind of way they see it. You know, I've seen people like, you know, Matt Heafy from Trivium, like, say, oh, he's had such a great time just spending his time with because he's got like 2 young kids as well now. So yeah, I imagine that's like the benefits towards COVID, obviously, besides all the shit stuff like not being able to tour, but definitely some positives, I suppose.
Exactly. It's a weird one because every musician friend I've been talking to, whether they're in smaller bands or bigger bands, they've all said the same thing. It's nice to actually have time to spend with friends and family, depending on which country they live in, if they can actually physically see friends and family. But also, I know so many musicians who are just using this time to go, you know what, nothing else we can do. Let's do even more writing. So I think this year and next year, we're going to see some amazing albums by pretty much every band on the planet coming out. Because we can't do anything else. We can't tour. So we're just going to write. So it's very productive, I hope, for a lot of bands.
I mean, as well, I was saying to Brad, like, I actually genuinely think, like, next year, there's just going to be so many fucking albums that come out. Like, it's going to be unreal.
It's going to be all of your favourite bands who are like, well, another year off the road, might as well write an album. We're enough writing an album without the pressure of going, we need to get an album out quickly because we need to get on tour and all this kind of stuff, which I know Cradle's had in the past. I know loads of bands who have had that. It's like, right, you basically like 2 or 3 years of your life is planned out in advance. It's like you're going to tour here, you're going to write here, you're going to record here, then you go back on tour here, you're going to write here, and that's basically what it is. Like every 2 or 3 years is plotted out in front of you. And then COVID put a stop to all that. And I think all the musicians have gone, well, we don't know when we're going on tour, so we can afford to take our time a little bit more. So it's going to be quite interesting. I know we've had that in Cradle where this new album that's going to come out at some point. We had the time that we didn't think we were going to have because we finished our tour cycle. And then we're like, right, we've got this much time to write and then get recording it. And then all of a sudden it became, right, now you've got all this time to write it and record it.
Yeah.
Take your time, pretty much.
We didn't want to on it.
Sorry, was that?
Yeah, you can like sort of like stew on it, you know what I mean? Like you don't have to like rush a certain section. You can just be like, oh, yeah, let's just chill. Let's just write it when we want.
Yeah, exactly. It was pretty weird because we did still want to stick with, well, we were writing during the whole last tour as well because we knew we'd have X amount of time to write before we went in the studio. Studio time was already booked and all that. And then COVID hit. I was actually recording guitars when the announcement was made about lockdown in the UK happening.
Yeah.
So it was like, okay, this is weird because we thought we could work around it all. And then all of a sudden the UK's in lockdown. What do we do? So it was kind of weird. So I finished recording the guitar parts in March last year. And then everybody had time to stew on the songs a bit more. Danny was there going, actually, I want to put some lyrics here where there's a guitar solo. Can we take the guitar solo out? Actually, this song, I don't want any lyrics on that bit. Can we add a guitar solo here? Can we? And then even the riffs and the ideas started to change, because it was like, actually now it's a bit more organic, because we've got time to stew on it, like you say, and go, this riff, we were happy with it. Now we've sat with it and heard it recorded for a while. This riff's not cutting the mustard. So I actually went back in September into the studio after leaving in March to re-record some riffs and some added parts that we had actually added to the album that just weren't on the demos when I originally went into the studio. So it's actually been really, really cool to have that time to go, you know what, this isn't working. This idea is actually now even better than we thought, because we've maybe orchestrated it a little bit differently, or arranged it a little bit differently. And then some riffs were like, no, now that we've sat with it, that's not going to make the final album. Let's change it. And I like to think we've made a much better album for it.
I'm really excited to hear it.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, that's not the only positive thing with that. I know that you've done in the pandemic. I know that you collaborated on the UK Metal Merger, supporting artists during the pandemic. Can you explain a bit more about that? You know, how did you get involved in it, and why do you think it's so crucial during this time to support the live industry?
What happened was Mark Minot, the producer, who I'm sure some people know, some don't, but he was also the guitar player in a band called Kill to This.
Right.
Which they were around in like the late 90s, early 2000s. And one of my old bands actually did a tour supporting them back when I was I was like 17 or 18, like 2002, 2003, that kind of time. Right. And I got to know Mark that way. And then he ended up later, through a weird twist of fate, that same band that I was supporting him with, like 10 years later, put out an album that needed to be remixed. And he was the guy who ended up remixing it. He'd long since stopped Kill to This and playing guitar, and then went to do the whole production thing. Then he fell into that. And we kept in touch over the years. And when the pandemic happened and we went into lockdown, after about 2 or 3 weeks, Mark got in touch with me. I literally just finished recording my Cradle of Filth guitars. When he got in touch with me just to say, look, this is going to be a thing where obviously bands aren't on tour, musicians and road crew are on tour for a bit. Let's see if we can raise some money and raise awareness and get the funds where they need to be and all this kind of stuff. So he sent me a drum track to basically say, can you write some riffs and maybe put a guitar solo down? I was like, and I sent him as many riffs as I could over God knows how many different drum beats he had. And I think he ended up using all of them in the end. So basically, all of my riffs made the album, and I think a couple of other riffs were added by some of the other guys. And it just became a fun project, something to do while we were in lockdown, because there wasn't much else to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Guitar teacher between tours, I'd lost like 90% of my work, because 90% of my work was face-to-face lessons. So I had to instantly switch everything to online lessons. And I was like, well, I've got a bit of a gap in my diary where I'm not even teaching. Obviously, I'm not going on tour anytime soon. So I'll happily help with some guest collaborations, which was a lot of fun. But then it started to become very clear that, yes, the original intention was to help out musicians and road crew and all this kind of stuff. But then it became very clear as the lockdown was getting on and on and on, and we weren't getting back on tour, we were realizing how serious this was becoming. Because we originally thought, 6 weeks off, 2 weeks off, maybe.
Yeah, that's what I thought as well.
Summer season, everything's going to be reopened again. All the festivals will still happen. And then it was becoming clearer and clearer that this isn't a thing that's going away anytime soon. And then it became more serious. And that's when Mark was like, right, let's get some PR involved. Let's get some big names involved. I've been doing interviews with like Sky News and BBC and stuff. And all of a sudden it's like, this is becoming a thing. And it's become even more of an issue, because we know road crew, friends of ours who work for multiple bands that we know, they're starting to like go to food banks for that to sell their homes. It's getting bleak, because these guys who are super, super skilled men and women cannot sustain a livelihood. Like, incredibly well skilled, incredibly adaptable skills, but there's no jobs. There's no jobs going. There's no jobs in the industry, and then they go to do jobs doing anything, and they're like, "Oh, sorry, we got no jobs going," because everyone's losing jobs, not just in the music industry. So it's becoming incredibly bleak as the time has gone on, and it's worrying even more because there might be the chance that a lot of summer festivals won't happen. The closer we get to festivals, where's the cutoff where it's like, well, these festivals aren't going to happen? Because if I remember correctly, Glastonbury's not happening this year.
No, it's not.
No, that's not. It's got cancelled pretty much as soon as
everything else. So it's like, what are we going to do? So it's become more and more serious as the months and the years as it's becoming now has gone on. So yeah, so it was just this thing where it started off as a little bit of fun, get a bit of funds together and raise awareness in the name of just making good music as well. And now it's become even more serious. We're like, okay, let's do some proper press behind it. Let's make this more of a thing than we originally intended. And thankfully, it's really taken off, and people are really taking it to heart and really see the seriousness behind it. But hopefully, they get a really good metal song at the end of it that I can listen to.
Yeah. You know? Well, that's my first thought when I saw like your Instagram post with it being on Sky News. I was like, finally, like, you know, this is getting picked up. It needs some traction because obviously the creative industry, the live industry, anything like that always gets left behind. Like nobody really cares because it doesn't seem as essential. But like these are people's lives, you know, and they don't seem to care. So, you know, it's really important to bring that to light.
It really, really is. Like in any kind of industry you can talk about. It's the first thing that hit me when lockdown happened was it's always like, oh, the artists and people who support the artists, they're the first people to lose their jobs. And I don't think a lot of people realize that musicians and road crew were the first to go down, because it was like, well, you can't fill a room full of 1,000, 2,000 plus people.
No.
So it's the first thing to go. And it'll probably be the last thing to come back in. Whereas a lot of other jobs in lots of other industries, they didn't need to shut down until the government told them to shut down. Yeah. And then as soon as things got opened up again, like they could open up pretty much straight away. Now imagine if the government turns around and says, right, summer festivals can go ahead, bands can go back on tour again. It's not that simple, because think of all the checks and all the logistics of setting something up like that. Even like a musical theatre production. I remember I've got friends who work in musical theatre, and they were saying it's like, great, we can go back to work, but you've got to get everybody rehearsed. You've got to get all the tech up and running.
Yeah.
Plotted out. It's not a simple case of, oh, we can open tomorrow. Cool, let's sell some tickets and put the show on. It's like another 3 months of rehearsals. Once you know, you can open up again. So it's this weird transition period that I think happens in the arts that a lot of people don't understand. You can't just open up and that's it, everyone go back on tour again. It's going to take a lot longer than that from the word go. Right, you can go back on tour again. Brilliant. It's going to probably be another 3 to 6 months after that before bands will actually be able to go on tour. And I don't think people realise that.
That's right.
It was crazy as well how the government sort of handled it. Like, remember the old like the like promotional like material they put, like, oh, you know, so and so used to be a dancer, but if she retrained, she coder. And I used to think that's just so fucking insensitive. Like to anyone that's in like the arts industry, because it's like, well, because they don't want to be a fucking coder. You know what I mean? Like that's literally it.
It's strange, and I, in a weird way, I get where the government's coming from, because they're going to go, look, you have adaptable skills. You can transfer those skills to do other stuff. So I think I get where the message was, but it went.
It was really poorly executed.
Very well. Yeah, poorly executed. Yeah, that's exactly right. It's one of those things where it's like, yes, we do have adaptable skills, but they don't want to adapt to do something they don't want to do. Like, as a guitar player, I mean, I picked up guitar when I was 11 years old, and I think I wanted to do it as a living when I was 14. And from that moment onwards, I was like, I want to be a guitar player for a living. I've worked hard to be a guitar player for a living. I still work hard at it. For someone to go, oh yeah, you don't do that anymore. I think you'll just find I'll decide when I don't want to do it anymore. You know what I mean?
You know who I am.
Everyone I know in the arts. So It's a difficult one because we're just basically we've had the rug pulled out from underneath us, but at the same time, luckily a lot of us have been able to adapt and earn money in other ways and transfer our skills to do other things, still music related. And then you get those people who, no matter what they do, they just get a million setbacks. And it's like, what do? Do you tell those people they can't do what they do for a living? That they're incredibly highly skilled at, that they've been doing for decades in some cases. And then you just go, oh, sorry, you can't do that anymore. It's heartbreaking. It really is.
Yeah. Well, really... it is crazy because I remember like I watched the Alpha Wolf. They did like a full like vlog for the their North American tour. And there's this episode of their vlog that they just released, like they released it during COVID, and there's an episode where you can actually see the moment the lockdowns start happening. So like I think they're in like New York or some area of America, and the tour manager goes up to him and goes, "We're not playing Philadelphia like tomorrow," and they're like, "What?" He went, "It's cancelled. Everyone's pulled out. Everyone's gonna have to go home," and they're like, "Yeah, but why?" And they're like, "Because of these lockdowns." And you see it in their like full like vlog, like almost documentary. And I was there like, that must be such a crazy feeling to be like doing shows one night and then literally after your last show, just your tour manager just going, "You're not playing tomorrow. We're having to get a flight home."
It's crazy, especially like you say with bands who were in the situation where they were already on tour. I know of some bands, again, smaller bands, bigger bands, that they literally did like 1 or 2 shows and then lockdown was announced. And again, what I think a lot of people don't realize is that people still need to be paid in terms of your band goes on tour, you start cancelling shows, still got to pay for tour buses. Even if it's not a tour bus, you've still got to pay for like a van hire. You've probably paid God knows how much to get so much merch pressed up. Probably thousands in a lot of people's cases. Now they're out of pocket because you can't sell that merch that you're just sitting on. And I don't think a lot of people realise that. It's tough. Like when you're already on tour, it gets very expensive and you need to play in order to get those costs back. Yes, there's that we need to play because this is what we do. We love playing. This is what we need to do. Our road crew love what they do. The musicians love what they do, but it is a business at the end of the day. And if those costs aren't recouped, there's a lot of bands I know who have gone absolutely bankrupt. And there's big bands right now who have a massive debt that they're struggling to pay back because they need to go on tour to pay back that debt. And it's going to be tough. I don't think it's going to be an easy fix. I like to stay optimistic, but I like to think I'm more of a realist. It's not going to be an easy fix. It's like, right, cool, everyone's back on tour again. But that tour is probably going to pay for the debts from a previous tour that got cancelled a year and a half before. No, so it's difficult. It's going to be really difficult. It's not going to be an easy fix. Everyone's got back on tour. Isn't life grand again? I think it's going to take a good few tours for people to get back on their feet.
No, you're exactly right. So if we go back then onto more positive, when things were actually less crazy and things were happening, which is great. If you go back to when you joined Cradle of Filth, what's been like your most cherished moment since being in the band? Like it could be a tour memory, it can be anything really.
Oh, so many, because it's weird because I was kind of like a casual fan of a band before I joined. I won't say I was a diehard fan. My brother was a diehard fan. Like he freaked out more than I did when I got the job.
I can imagine.
It's still weird for him to say, "Yeah, my brother's a guitar player in one of my favorite bands." It's really weird for him, but really cool. So I kind of obviously was familiar with the band and did like a lot of this stuff. Some stuff, I'll be honest with you, I just didn't get it. And then some stuff I thought was brilliant. I was that kind of fan. So I would go see them live and stuff. And then all of a sudden I'm in the band. It's pretty weird. So there's so many things I can think of, but the one that still stands out for me is Main Stage Download.
Oh yeah, that was insane.
Play Main Stage Download, which even now just is weird for me to say that out loud because I've been to every download since 2005, And I wasn't allowed to go in 2003 when it started, or 2004, because I was doing my exams and my mum and dad wouldn't let me go. I was like, oh, curse you, mum and dad! Like I missed so many bands, but it was really cool. So I've been to literally every single download since 2005, being a local lad and all. And then all of a sudden in 2018, I'm on the main stage playing, and that was just
surreal.
I cannot describe it. I cannot describe how it felt. It was just bizarre. And I'm looking out into the crowd, and there's people who saw me play like my first gigs ever when I was like 13 years old on the front row.
Oh, wow.
And so like, you're just going, this is nuts. And then they're like one of God knows how many people were out there. And still to this day, that's the one moment that really hit me. And even when we came off stage, like the first person to say, man, that was a great show, gave me a big hug, was Ice-T. And you go, what?
Ice-T?
right. Ice-T and Body Count were watching the side of stage. And Ice-T goes, man, that was awesome, gives me a big hug. And it's like, how did it feel? That felt really good, Mr. Ice-T. Yes.
Ice-T.
Don't call him Mr. T. That'd be a bit weird, actually. Mr. Ice-T. Yeah. Like being a Body Count fan as well, you're going, this is just weird. But really cool. And just that whole day was mental, playing the show, and then you're hanging out backstage with like some of your favourite bands going, this is nuts. This is what is my life.
I imagine it's like everyone's dream as a musician just to be on main stage. Like, and I can't imagine like how humble it must have felt to actually be up there just like playing like, I've made it, guys.
God, it's a weird feeling because it was one of those moments where I kind of soaked it in as much as I could, because I think we're only on stage for like 40 minutes, something like that. And it went so quickly, and I had to soak it in as much as I could. And then after that, when I woke up the next day, it was like, okay, now what? It was this weird feeling of going, you've literally played the #1 bucket list venue. Yeah, now what? And it was just where you start. Sorry?
Glastonbury.
Glastonbury would be cool. But this is what I mean. There's still so many things I'd love to do with the band. And I think that's where, like, my mindset is be happy with where you're at, but there's always that other thing. And it's the mindset I've kind of always had. I'm very, very grateful with where I'm at. Even before I joined Grateful, I was always grateful that I was earning a living as a musician, and that was the goal. That's what I considered to have made it. I was paying the bills by playing guitar. That was the goal, and I did it way before I joined the band. But there's always something more, and it was almost like that feeling when we played Download. It was like, okay, cool, I did it. Now what? Yeah. There's got to be more. There's got to be more.
You just ticked such a massive box off the bucket list. Like it's been
very, very, very strange. And we've been around the world. We're so lucky that no matter where we go around the world, we play to like the same kind of size crowds. We're one of the few bands I know that can do that, because there's some bands who are massive in the UK but not in the States. They're massive in Asia but not in Europe. You know what I mean? Like there's some bands I know, they play to like literally like 50,000-60,000 people in some places, but when they come over to the UK, they play to like 30 people. And it's like, whereas Cradle, we're not playing to the 50,000-60,000 of our own shows, but we could play to a good 1,000 or 2,000 people everywhere we go with our own shows. So we're incredibly lucky. And you go around the world, play all these big festivals, and you're very grateful to do what you do, but you know there's more to it. It's like you get to the top of a mountain, and what do you see? Oh, there's another mountain over there. I'll do that one now. And I think that's a mindset that doesn't just translate to music. I think it translates to just life in general. It's like, be happy with where you're at, but strive for more. And I don't think it's a mindset to have, if that might make sense.
Oh, always have goals. Like, like I said, be satisfied, but if you don't set yourself goals, then you will become a bit complacent. So you want to make sure that you're always hungry for the next thing. But, you've got to be happy with the achievements that you've done.
Exactly. I've met a lot of people in lots of industries where they're kind of, like you say, they almost get complacent. It's like they're the top of the top. And you're like, oh my God, everyone wants to do what they're doing. But then they do. They kind of get complacent, and I don't know how to explain it. It's like almost like their output is the same, and they're not really challenging themselves anymore.
Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, they're not the top of the top anymore.
Yeah, it's kind of like it's like a rug gets swept underneath them.
Exactly. It's a weird thing, and let's say that doesn't just relate to music. I think it relates to a lot of things in life. But the most important thing is being happy with where you're at. But there is more. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You're always trying to think, well, what? Now we've done that. What next? What next? I think that's what all my favorite bands have done. You look at all the biggest bands, they got big. Imagine like Metallica, like they could have done the Black Album and gone, right, that's it. They don't need to do it. Well, some people may argue they didn't do much more after that, but it depends. I'm that fan who literally loves everything they've ever done because they challenged themselves. Yeah, it wasn't a hit with everything they did. Like not every fan loved it, but at least they did what they wanted to do, and everything they did was different to what they'd done before. They could have easily just ridden the Black Album wave forever and that was it, you know what I mean? But every album they did was different, and they always wanted to do different shows and different kinds of albums, different everything. And I think those are the bands that need to be applauded, and I like to think that Cradle of Filth would be one of those bands as well.
Definitely.
One thing I want to ask is obviously when you initially joined Cradle, were there any like nerves going into it? Like, can you remember what sort of feelings you was going through when you kind of joined Cradle for the first time, like the first time you even played on stage with them?
Oh God, I was so nervous. So nervous. Weirdly enough, other than Download 2018, that main stage I was just talking about, that was the last time I was nervous. When it really hit me how big Download was, I was like, oh my God, I'm doing it. This is the #1 bucket list. But before that, the most nervous I'd been was that first show. That first ever show with Cradle, which I think was February 7th. Yeah, February 7th, 2014. Because I got the call like at the tail end of December. So I think I had like 5 or 6 weeks to learn the set. And I was still even driving down to rehearsals, listening to like a mixtape. I'm going to call it a mixtape, not a playlist.
Mixtape sounds cool, doesn't it?
Mixtape of all the songs, and I'm going in my head, going, don't forget them. Trying to think what part comes next while I'm driving. Like, so that's literally up until the last moment. And then when I met them all, we literally did 2 mornings of rehearsals. Yeah, one on a Tuesday morning, one on a Wednesday morning. And then Thursday was the first show. So I'd literally known them for like 2 days before I played my first show with them. And it was just one of those moments of, please say I've learned the songs properly. Like, don't fuck up. It was honestly, no matter what you do, because it's one. I think what a lot of people didn't realize was, because I was obviously coming in as a session guy, it was like, right, I'm actually playing songs that somebody else wrote, and I'm there to do the job as well as I can. I'm a session guy. If I make a mistake, or some big mistakes, there's a chance that I don't stay in the band. It's as simple as that. Yeah. I think if you own the band and you run the band, you can make as many mistakes as you like, and nobody can fire you. It's your band. In a weird way. So I've had people who have their own bands and people who are session guys who say that is the thing. If they own the band and they make a mistake, it's crap, never mind. But at least your job's not in jeopardy. Whereas a session guy, it's like, we'll just get someone else in if you're going to play that badly.
It's more like a probation period, isn't it, really?
It is. It's like this weird thing where I was just on stage going, right, don't get in anyone's way. Like, even before the show, it was like, right, I've got to learn how to put corpse paint on. It's not like I did this was the first time putting the costume on and doing the makeup and all that. I didn't even do the makeup myself. Lindsay, our keyboard player at the time, was like, right, sit down. I'm going to do your makeup for the first 2 or 3 shows, and then it's up to you. After that, I was like, okay, all right. And she did mine. And bear in mind, Ashok, the other guitar player, he had joined on that same day as well. That was his first show. So we had to get 2 guitar players up to scratch by the first show. We literally had 2 run-throughs for set. So it was very much being thrown in at the deep end. And at the time, I didn't even know I was going to stay in the band. I was literally going to do that 1 4-week tour of Europe. It was a co-headliner with Behemoth as well, so it was like, bloody hell, this is a big deal. You know what I mean? Like, Cradle of Filth, co-headliner, a lot of sold out shows.
It's like a sort of no pressure sort of situation.
No pressure, yeah, kind of thing. Because obviously Behemoth at this point as well were a well-oiled machine. They'd just released For Satanists. They were rehearsed within an inch of their life, and then we literally did 2 rehearsals and was like out on tour, and it was like, oh, crap, like we've got to be as pro and as on it as Behemoth with the shortest amount of rehearsal time ever. And somehow I think we pulled it off. It depends who in the crowd you ask, but I think we pulled it off, and we had some amazing shows. But I just remember being incredibly nervous that first show. I'd only met everybody like a few days before. Like, it was my first time on a tour bus. It was my first time seeing a lot of these countries. But then the second show happened. I remember just waking up the day after the first show going, cool, we've done it.
Yeah.
Now, fun with it.
That initial over the first hurdle.
Yeah, there was a weird thing like the morning after the first show where everyone became incredibly relaxed. The band, the crew, everybody, because it was all of a sudden like, now we know this works. And it felt, not only did it work, it felt really good. We had like instant chemistry from like show 1. So then it became a lot more relaxed, and it was brilliant. And like I say, sorry, going backtrack a little bit, like nobody knew I was a session guy at the time. I was coming in to do that 1-month tour, and then I was like, going to get paid. Thank you very much. Go home. It's a brilliant thing to put on the CV. Cheers. I played great. But on the last the day after the last show, that's when Danny sat me down and was like, yeah, Paul's not coming back. Do you want to stick around? Do you want to write the next album with us? Yeah. If you don't
if you want, yeah, sure.
It's almost like being handed, I don't know, like the Willy Wonka's golden ticket. It's like, there you go. It's like, this is everything you've worked for. Do you want it? Yes, please.
Yeah, if you're sure.
Like, of course I do. I have it right now.
Yeah. But then it was a case of, they've asked me if I want to write the next album. The album would become Hammer of the Witches. They want to ask if, they asked if I want to write the next album. They don't know if I can write, let alone in the style of music of Cradle of Filth. They were just like, well, we like you as a player, so write some riffs. We'll get started writing the next album. Then that was another level of pressure where you're like, oh no, I'm replacing an original member who is quite well loved by the fans, and now I'm going to write the next era of Cradle of Filth's music. Oh, Christ. But luckily, for most fans, it went down really, really well. So there's that level.
Really good.
Yeah, every album you do, to be fair, there is always that level of, oh crap, I hope this goes down well. Yeah. We like the song, but we hope the fans do as well. You never know. Because let's be honest, metal fans are interesting.
Yeah. You either get some that love you no matter what, but then you get the other side that if you try anything different to their favourite song, that's it. They don't want anything to do with you. I've had enough. It's like, fuck's sake. Like,
metal elitism, I find laughable, but at the same time, I totally understand it, because I'm passionate about music and my favourite films, favourite bands, favourite, anything you're passionate about, you have an opinion on. So I totally get it. And that's the thing. I think metal musicians, they're just passionate. Mm-hmm. Either way, if they passionately love something, they'll let you know. If they passionately hate something, they'll let you know.
Yeah.
So, whereas you do get it in other genres, but I don't think to the level of metal.
No, definitely not.
I will post something and the hate comments will just be ridiculous. Oh, calm down. It's an album. Calm down. There'll be another one that I'm sure you'll like more than this one. Calm down.
Yeah, that's like if you're in the lives when you release a song, you're like, oh my god, I can't believe you've done this. My life's ruined.
It's like it's a song. It's like you will always get those fans, those Cradle fans that I still meet to this day, where it's like everything sucks after the first album.
That's not true.
Then you'll get those guys that are like, everything sucks after the demo. They sold out when they released their first album. You know what I mean? You can't, and then you'll get some people who think the last album we recorded was the best album Cradle's ever done. So it's like, you can't please everybody, as we know. But I find it really, really funny, the whole metal elitism thing. But but at the same time, I totally get it.
Yeah,
totally get it. They're passionate. They get it. It's brilliant that they're passionate.
No, absolutely.
What I find mental about metal elitism is sometimes that they might target a band and like hate on them, but when you actually listen to like the band's music, you go, actually, these guys are trying like really different shit. Like, I don't think we should hate on them because I feel like a lot of bands will start copying this. Like they do it a lot with like sort of metalcore bands, but then like mainstream metal bands will go, I really like that metalcore song. I'll add a few like chunky breakdowns into our song, and they'd be like, oh, I fucking love that. I'm like, well, that fucking metalcore band started it.
Yeah.
Thing, like, you can always look back and I always see metal as this great big melting pot of music, not just metal and all the subgenres helping each other out. Because obviously metal is inspired by classical and rock, and there's even pop elements in a lot of metal. There's jazzier elements in a lot of metal, funky elements in a lot of metal. So it's just this massive melting pot, and with every kind of new wave, not new wave, but you know what I mean. There's a wave of what's trendy or something. People will slag it off, like, and go, oh, hated it at the time, and then they look back and go, actually, I didn't hate it that much. New metal springs to mind at that.
Yeah, there's so many people that now started
like, this sucks, and then they're like 20 years later, they're like, actually, I did own a Limp Bizkit album.
I see those comments all the time.
Everything kind of evolves. You know what I mean? Like, there's even bits where I'd be lying if there's stuff on the new Cradle of Filth album and the last two I've done where it's like, well, I was influenced by bands that say the older generation weren't. And I know it sounds horrible to say, but I'm putting Danny and like the original members involved in that as well, because they're a good 10, 15 years older than I am.
Yeah.
So it's like I was influenced by stuff, same stuff as them, I'm sure, so a lot of the same bands, but there's a lot of the younger bands I was influenced by as well, which must have crept its way into the music. You know what I mean? And
100%.
Everything that helps each other out. You know what I mean? You're influenced by the old school, but then there's new bands that I'm checking out where I go, that's really cool. It's going to seep into the music somehow. When you're writing something, there's no way you can't be influenced by the new stuff and only the old stuff. There's no way.
No, I completely agree. Yeah. So I got to say, the Cradle riffs are achingly beautiful. Pardon the pun. So, if you would say, if it was going to be a cocktail, what cocktail would it be? Because it's like, you've got a bit of beauty, a bit of violence. Like, what if you could describe your riffs? What cocktail would they be?
Oh, bloody hell. That's a good question.
Thank you. Made it myself.
It's hard to say, because when I write with Cradle, I'm sure the other guys will say the same as well. A lot of it is just, it's whatever comes out, whatever makes sense. And as we write more songs, that's when we go, okay, we're missing this kind of song from the album.
Yeah.
And in a way, I'd be lying if I didn't say Cradle do look to the past and almost be influenced by the past. It's like, well, what made Cruelty and the Beast great? What made Midian great? What made Just Gonna Embrace great? You know what I mean? Like those kind of classic Cradle albums. And there was, I think Cradle's sound, it was almost like that Iron Maiden on steroids thing, but it was also the atmosphere and the beauty hidden within like the guitar melodies and the atmosphere and the keyboard melodies. And it was that big melting pot of, it was outright full on extreme metal.
Yeah, for sure.
With that gothic atmosphere, like this almost cinematic atmosphere. And obviously I'd be a moron obviously not to mention Danny's voice. It's like Danny's voice was just, and still is, so unique. I feel like Cradle don't get enough recognition in how varied their music is. I think to Joe Blogs on the street, they'd listen to Cradle of Filth and go, all the songs sound the same. I get it. I totally get that. I understand that. But for metal fans, Cradle of Filth fans, they will listen there and go, you know what, all these albums are completely different, but there is that unifying theme of extreme metal, but the atmosphere and the beauty and hauntingness. I can't think what that kind of vibe is very unique to Cradle, and I think that's a big part of it musically. But specific to my riffs, I couldn't tell you, to be honest with you. It's just right and just go, that sounds cool. Let's see if other people find it cool. Like, if you're not excited by your own riffs and your own songs, then you can't really expect anyone else to be excited by your songs. That's the way I see it.
Well, I think, like, when I think of a cocktail with Cradle, it's almost like, it's very fruity, like, it's very beautiful, you know what I mean? Like, very nice toppings, bit of a pineapple on there, but then, like, someone just shoved, like, a whole bottle of absinthe in it as well, so it's like, it just kicks you right in the face.
I'd go with that. Yeah, definitely. It leaves a funny aftertaste. People like that taste or they don't. And luckily, I think a lot of people like that aftertaste. They like... Yeah. I think for a lot of people, Cradle's just very cinematic, like immersive music. You get a lot out of it, and then you get the people, like I say, like who listen to it and go, "Well, all the songs sound the same. I don't really get it," and that's fine as well. That's like saying you I don't know. If it's like a film director you like, you might not like every single film
they do,
done, you know what I mean? It doesn't mean you don't like the director. You just don't like everything they've done. And I think Cradle's like one of those bands where people who get it really get it, and there's not a lot of bands like that, I think, in a weird way. I think the bands that are really big are like that, like people who get it really get it, and they kind of make it like the soundtrack of their lives, whereas the bands that don't get to a big stage, they're kind of the bands that don't have anything, I don't know, that unique about them.
Yeah, no substance.
It sounds horrible. It does sound horrible to say it. There are a lot of bands that do sound the same.
Yeah.
There's a reason why they haven't been. Don't get me wrong, some of them are even big bands, but it's like they could have been bigger had they just
changed something
about them that was different. And every big band I can think of, they're the best at what they do.
Yeah, absolutely. 100%. I think that's what's so great about Cradle is like you've got all these different elements thrown into your music. Obviously, you've got the obvious like sort of black metal influences, but I also, like just listening to you over the years, there's also like really crunching like melodies in there, like and really brutal sections. But then you've also got this incredible like operatic like atmosphere going on as well, like mixed with like Danny's vocals. It really complements each other. How, as a guitarist, do you sort of handle all those elements and sort of condense them into like 4 minutes? Like,
it's difficult. I'm not gonna lie. It's gotten easier over the years. Like the first song I ever wrote for Cradle was a song called "Enshrined in Crematoria." That's on the Hammer of the Witches album, and that song didn't exactly go down well with certain members of the band, because it was my first time writing in Cradle style. But then I was like, okay, well, are there any bits you do like? What don't you like? And then it became like, right, okay, let's talk it through. Let's do this. And then I almost learned how to write in a Cradle kind of way as I was going. And that's what, to me, the sound of Hammer of the Witches is. And I'm very, very proud of that album. But that's why I think Cryptoriana kind of worked a little bit better, because we knew how far to push each other. And me and Ashok had been in the band and writing for the band for about 3 years at that point, instead of like 3 months. So we knew how far to push each other. We learned the tricks of what makes Cradle sound like Cradle, but still push the boundaries of what we can do with it. And it's a strange one, because you just kind of learn these things by like looking at the past, but still moving forward. And Cradle is always a big melting pot of all those kind of metal styles. But again, giving Danny a lot of credit. Danny has a vision of where he wants these albums to go and where he wants the music to go in general, and the aesthetics and the theatricalness, the cinematic scope of it all. That guy is a visionary. He really is. And we Danny's like encyclopedic. What's the word? Encyclopedic knowledge of metal is insane. That guy can tell you any band in any genre, subgenre of metal. That guy will have their demos. He's that guy in metal where he's like, oh yeah, that band you've never heard of from buttfuck nowhere. Like he's got their demo. You're like, how did? Oh yeah, I've got their demo from like 1979 before they kind of released one album and was banished to obscurity. But then you check out the album, it's brilliant. You're like, how does this guy know these bands? But he's like that about film music as well. I don't think a lot of people know this. This guy can literally listen to like a bar of film music and go, that's from that film that was released in this year. And it was composed by this guy. Like, how the... And so I think a lot of people don't really understand like Cradle of Filth's cinematic, well, film music in general influence. So the number of times when I'm writing a Cradle of Filth riff or a song, whatever, I'm not necessarily listening to metal bands. I'm listening to film music and going, how can I translate that into a guitar-based metal context? And that's where a lot of the ideas come from, is more from film music, I think.
Well, I think you'd be blind to like ignore just like the horror movie aspects of Cradle of Filth. Like you can just see it in the artwork, in the music. Like it seems more than just the metal. But obviously everyone knows that horror and metal go hand in hand. But I feel like to the extreme, like I know I've seen like interviews with Danny talking about like how much he loves horror movies and he collects all the stuff for it. So yeah, I think you can see that element in Cradle of Filth quite easily.
Definitely. Again, I think it sets us apart. I think obviously there's bands like Rob Zombie does that as well.
Yeah.
But it's in a very different way. And I think that's what makes, again, Rob Zombie unique. That marriage of movies and music, but he does it in a very different way to say Cradle does. Obviously, because we sound completely different. But it's, I think that, excuse me, that love of music and film comes from the same place. But both Cradle and Rob Zombie have both very different outcomes, but influenced by similar stuff. So again, I always thought the Cradle cinematic thing was just the thing that made them unique. Not many bands do that kind of thing. When they do, it kind of almost sounds like like some kind of weird parody.
Yeah.
Where Cradle is almost kind of really authentic about it, I think.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you've expressed like a lot of excitement for this new album that's coming out, and I assume you probably can't talk too much about it, but what would you say, a brief description of what's this album going to be like? Is it going to be something that we've never seen before? Is it going to be quite reminiscent of like the last era of Cradle of Filth, or is it just,
It's a weird one because, like I said, to backtrack a little bit, Hammer of the Witches, mine and Ashrock's first album with the band. Been in the band 3 months. Let's see if we can write something like that. Cryptoriana was right. Okay, let's do that. It worked. Let's do that, but then push it to the nth degree. Now that we're like known each other for 3 years, not 3 months.
Yeah.
This album was more of a, we don't want to do Hammer of the Witches Part 3. I don't think anybody wanted that. We wanted a very different album, and this is why I think we're excited but kind of scared at the same time, because it is very different to Hammer and Cryptoriana. Again, yes, it has been influenced by the past, but this album doesn't sound like, in my opinion, much like what Cradle's done before. So it's a weird thing, because it's like taking that chemistry of Hammer of the Witches and Cryptoriana, influenced by the past, but going, we can't rely on what happened in the past. Let's almost treat it like a new band and see what happens. So that's why I'm really excited about it, but at the same time, very nervous about it being released. Because I'm sure there's going to be some fans who hate it, and there's going to be some fans who probably think it's the best thing we've ever done. It's a strange one. But yeah, without saying too much, there's a little bit of everything going on this album. I think it's one of the most diverse and musically broad Cradle of Filth albums. We'll just have to wait and see what the fans think of it.
Yeah, I personally, I can't wait. I can't wait to listen to it.
Awesome.
I enjoy literally everything that you guys do. Like, you're one of those few bands out there that they're still going, that are like still changing the sound massively. I think like you can tell what albums what the minute you listen to the first song. Like you can tell how different it is, and you know, like I personally love your music. I think it's fucking amazing.
Cheers, man. Appreciate that.
But you guys are consistent as well. That's the best thing.
Yeah, and consistent. It's still Cradle of Filth, but you can always pick up on the sort of little changes and like what's new about this, like the next album after that.
It's a funny one. We've talked about this at length, and especially with management and our producer, where it's almost like the number of times I've written riffs. I mean, how many? I had like something like 150, 200 riffs for this album.
Okay, 200 riffs.
Something like 200 riffs, and the number of times I was like, well, the producer was like, have you got any more songs? I was like, well, I've got riffs, I've got some songs, but I don't know if they're cradle friendly, if that makes sense. That's why I've not brought them forward. And then I remember management and Scott, our producer, just going, put it this way, as soon as we put keyboards, drums, and Danny's vocals on it, it's going to sound like Cradle of Filth. And you're like there going, it's a very good point. And when I realised that, all of a sudden I started presenting more ideas. I think the other guys were the same as well, where it's like ideas we wouldn't necessarily have presented, thinking it doesn't sound Cradle enough, all of a sudden ended up on the album. And it, weirdly enough, sounds very Cradle because of the drum beat, the keyboard, the orchestration, Danny's vocals. It's almost like the guitars are like, it's pretty cool. We can do whatever the hell we want, because as soon as we add things around it, it's going to sound like Cradle. So it became a bit of a more freeing album in that sense, where it's like, God, we don't have to write to a brief where it's got to sound like Cradle, because it's going to sound like Cradle regardless. So again, that's why I'm excited for that album, but I'm a little scared about it coming out because it's a little bit different than people are probably expecting. But I'd be really bored if it was the same album over and over.
Oh yeah, you've got to change it up every now and again.
Yeah. Sure. I think any musician would. There's not many bands that get away with churning the same thing out over and over and over again. I'm sure we can think of a few off the top of my head, like the AC/DCs and the Slayers of the world.
Yeah, but I think that works for them because like
get away with releasing the same album over and over again, but it's still amazing. You know, it's a weird thing.
I think like bands like that they'll manage to get away with it because it's like that was like, yeah, you know what, we'll let him off because they are like AC/DC, like Slayer and stuff. Like,
they are the best at that thing.
Yeah, you know 100%. Like, don't get me wrong, like, I've heard. Okay.
No, I was going to say like this. I wouldn't even put Cradle in that category. Yes, Cradle are very unique, but they're not that unique where they could get away with making the same album over and over and over. Yet the Slayers and the AC/DCs of the world can, because they are the best at it. You know, in my opinion. So I think they get away with it. A lot of bands can't.
I personally think you guys are one of the top tier bands in my honest opinion. Like, like just the sheer creativity that like goes into like your music, and not even like down to art and stage presence and what you wear on stage. There's a lot of thought that goes into it. Like, what is sort of the thought process behind it all? Like, do you have like an initial plan, like when you start writing the album, what the art's going to be and how you're going to, what the stage performances are going to be like and stuff like that? Or do you take it on the chin?
Lots of tits.
A weird thing, because in all honesty, I genuinely think that's all in Danny's head. Because he doesn't share it with any of us until not long before the fans do, weirdly enough. The number of times, I know it sounds funny, but the number of times I've had to say to Danny, like, Dan, mate, come on, let the band know you're going to do something before you let the fans know. And he does, because the way it works is we kind of write the songs. Danny gets excited by some songs. Danny's very hands-on with the writing. I think a lot of people assume that we just give him the songs, there you go. He's very like, oh, cool, it needs this kind of riff in there. Make that riff twice as long. Like, do this. Can we try that in a different key? Even though he doesn't play anything, he's very hands-on with the arrangements.
Yeah.
he knows once he's heard the kind of a gist of the song. I don't know how he does it, but he knows where it needs to go, even if it's just the germ of an idea. He's like, I know there's going to be vocals here. I know what kind of thing I'm going to do here. So can we make this twice as long? That needs to be half as long. Try this, try that. Guitar solo here. Like he's the guy who suggested guitar solos. Everyone thinks it's the guitarist who came in and went, right, there's now going to be guitar solos in Cradle of Filth music. But Danny was the one who we need guitar solos. And that's when we've had guitar solos ever since. So it's a weird one because we'll start the songs, we'll write the songs and give him the idea. And then once he's got like 2 or 3 songs, even just for germs of them, talking to him, you can see his mind goes, right, I know where the artwork's going to go. I know where lyrically the theme is going to go. And it's almost like the more songs we add, the more that vision kind of is made concrete. So, I mean, we've seen the album artwork already and the lyrics and all this kind of stuff and where we're going to go with it. But that's only because COVID happened. I think the number of times the artwork literally before 2 or 3 days before the fans have seen it, because he's working closely behind the scenes with the artists and all that kind of stuff, to a point where even the band haven't seen it. But it's Dan's vision, it's Dan's band, and I think a lot of people don't realise that it's that Cradle of Filth is his baby. We're just there to help him create the vision. You know what I mean? So
I like to imagine that, I like to imagine that when Danny gets like there with the artist and he's like, forging the plan. He's like, right, okay, next album cover, we need tits, we need blood, we need trees.
I think that's pretty much the criteria. The Cradle album cover, but it is the number of times on Cradle's Facebook page and all that kind of stuff, the forum, because I'm one of the admins of it, and the number of times the phone pops up, it's like going, this post has been removed because it goes against Facebook guidelines, because fans just reshare the artwork, and you're there going, blur the tits before you share it. Facebook has to take it down because there's a nipple. It's like, God forbid there's a nipple on the internet.
Facebook.
Internet before, But yeah, it is one of those things where there's an aesthetic that Cradle are known for, but again, they can push the boundaries with even the album artwork, the backdrop we have on stage, the layout of it, how everything's going to be on stage, and musically, there's a blueprint, but we can push that blueprint. We're very, very lucky that we did get to do that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I wanted to ask you as well, more into your personal life. I mean, I did a deep dive on your Instagram. I can see that you've been to Hobbiton in New Zealand. So you got to talk about that. I was like, I'm very jealous that he's been there. So tell me how it is. Were you like too tall? Did you hit the chandeliers? Like, tell me all about
it. It's a very cool place. It was wicked. It was like, we're in New Zealand. What's the one thing we want to do at Hobbiton? That's great, but let's make a point of that. So when the tour had finished, we were like, you know what? A few of us were like, let's just spend some extra time in New Zealand. Like, my first and only time in New Zealand. Cradle's first time in New Zealand. We'd never played New Zealand before. So Danny was like, I'm staying and making the most of this. We might never be back. I hope we'll be back. From the sounds of it, we will be back, but we don't know when, obviously. And Hobbiton was just such a cool place. Like, to be honest with you, and it shocks a lot of people, I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings fan in the world, but I went with people who were. And I'm just a movie fan in general. So I love seeing film sets, regardless of what film it is, and like the magic behind the movies kind of thing. But I was going like Danny and Daniel Further, huge Lord of the Rings fans. And it was just like they were just like little kids. It was really, really cool to see. And it's kind of exactly how you picture it and more. That's all I can say. It's one of those places you've got to go. And I got to go to the pub and have beer and all that kind of stuff that's in there. Generally really good beer as well. I'm not much of a beer fan. I was really impressed with it. But yeah, it was just such a cool place. And when you go to the top, because you can walk up right to the top of the hill and look over it, and all you can see is just like the fields and the farms of New Zealand. And like, it was one of those moments when you get to that top of a hill where where one of the houses is, where I think Bilbo, I think it's Bilbo's house actually. You just look out and you go, this is something else. It's just one of those places. As a Lord of the Rings fan, I think people have got to see it. But as a movie fan, for me, because like I said, I'm not the biggest Lord of the Rings fan, it was still overwhelming and still amazing to see it.
Really looks breathtaking, really breathtaking, to be honest.
Yeah. And it's just when you realise how they did it and the attention to detail is insane. They even before they even filmed things on the track, they would make sure that people put out genuine washing, not just props, but it was genuine. And they did it on purpose. They would come out of the hut and whatever they're called, and they'd come out and literally, so there would be footprints, like Hobbit footprints in the grass before they'd shoot action. So it looks lived in. That's the attention to detail they had. It was like, no, this even the trees and things were planted in a particular place on purpose, and things like that. Like even all the leaves are fake, but you wouldn't think it. You're like, what the hell? That's insane.
You definitely sold it to me, that's for sure.
Yeah, it's really, really well done. And the guide who takes you around tells you about certain scenes that happen in the film and how they shot it, and even the shots that went wrong. They went, well, how can we make it right? And it's like, we'll show it backwards. Stuff like that, when they realised the sun went the wrong way. I think there's like a sunset and it went the wrong way. And they were like, well, we'll just film it backwards. Stuff like that. And it's like, oh, that's really cool. Like I get really geeky about stuff like that. But I just wish I was a big enough of a Lord of the Rings nerd to really know what they were talking about. You know this scene? Nah. Well, I might tell you what happened. Well, I'll happily listen to what happened, but I've got no context because I've not seen it. So, but anyway, yeah. Sorry for all.
Sounds incredible.
No, think everybody it's the greatest film ever. I don't agree personally, but
me and Brad always have arguments about it because it's on my list of top films, and I do like it, but it's not like my favorite. Like, it's not like I'm like, this was groundbreaking, but Brad's like almost strangles me every time I say that because he's like, how can you say that?
Yeah. I don't like Star Wars, so we kind of equal each other out.
Mine Star Wars is his Lord of the Rings.
I'm definitely more of a Star Wars guy, but I get why people don't like Star Wars.
I do it. It's almost.
You know what I mean? I get why people don't like it, but I won't ram down the front. What are you all about? What are you talking about? Because I adore Star Wars.
Yeah.
But I get why people don't like it. At the same time, you know what I mean? And it was like that with Lord of the Rings for me. Like I think I probably would like it if I could stay awake for it.
It's definitely a commitment.
It's like not a full day.
I've tried, just to give it into context, I've tried, how many times have I tried to watch the first Lord of the Rings film? I think it's 9. I think I've tried 9 times. Every time I've fallen asleep halfway through. No matter how tired or awake I feel, I'm always asleep. And I'm like, well, it probably is brilliant if I can get to the end of it.
I mean, you've given it 9 shots, so I don't think anyone can fault you for that. You've definitely given it.
I've genuinely tried because it's the kind of film that on paper I should adore. I can't get to the end of it. I don't know what it is. There's not many films that can do that to me. So I don't know what it is about the film that is making me fall asleep. On paper, I should love it.
I was saying to Brad, I was like, I'm going to have a marathon of Lord of the Rings. And I was like, you like, yeah, go for it. I texted him back about 2 hours later going, yeah, nah, fuck that. I'm not giving up 8 hours of my life for just a movie marathon. Nah, I'm all right.
It's like the number of people who have said, so you've not seen the final battle in Return of the King? No. Oh, you've got to see that. Well, can I just watch Return of the King? No. That's not how it works. You need to know the build-up. So I've got to watch 9 hours of film for the last half hour.
To one battle.
That must mean it's not a very good film. But, like I say, if you've got to watch 9 hours of it for the last half hour to be brilliant, it can't be that good a film. However, like I say, I want to like it. I might try it again. I might try it again this weekend, and I'll come back to you.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah.
Let me know what the time's like.
I'll get back to you and be like, guys, I got to the end. It's fucking brilliant. You know, you never know. It might be one of those films where if I could just get to the end, it'll change my life. But it's not happened yet.
Yeah, keep us updated.
I've seen the 3 Hobbit films, and I was awake for all those. So that's weird.
I think The Hobbit's easier to digest, to be honest. I think I don't know what it is about it, but it's definitely easier, like binging the 3 Hobbit films than it is binging Lord of the Rings. As much as I prefer Lord of the Rings, I don't know what it is about The Hobbit.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's because The Lord of the Rings is such a long haul of a film. Like it gives you all the information you need, but it does it at a really slow pace. So you kind of sat there going, fucking hell, they've been in this like dungeon for like 2 hours, it feels like.
It's a weird thing. So many of my favourite films that are really slow paced. So it's not a slow paced film thing. It's not that it's slow paced. It's not the fact it's a long film. I don't know what it is, because I should love it. So I don't know. I just wish I could like it, so I don't get into arguments with people.
You know just with the stress now. Just want to avoid the arguments. Let me like it.
It probably seems like I don't want to piss people off, but I seem to piss people off when I say I don't like Lord of the Rings. People are like, what? like, God forbid you tell Danny Filth you don't like Lord of the Rings.
I've got to keep it a secret.
Yeah, he's like, I will fire you if you say that again. He's like, he loves Lord of the Rings that much. Like, God knows how many times that guy's watched Lord of the Rings. He like knows every word. And I remember saying, I don't really like Lord of the Rings. But it was like I'd walked in on Christmas dinner and pissed on his kids. It was like, you know, yeah. I think he was genuinely thinking, who let this guy in the band? It's like, you did. Oh, yeah. But then in a lot of ways, we've got a lot of films that we absolutely adore and we talk at length about, like, that nobody else seems to get, that we think of some of the greatest films ever. So...
Oh yeah, me and Brad are like quite big movie buffs, because Brad studied film in uni, and I've always been like really into my films. So like we occasionally have like the debate like what's better, Lord of the Rings or Star Wars, and it almost ends in a fist fight. But then we also go, yeah, but what about that film? We really like that, don't
we? Exactly. This is the thing. Again, coming back to our music thing, you can't please everybody. Even like Lord of the Rings, one of the most, if not, I don't know. Is it the most successful franchise? I don't really know, actually.
I think it's Avengers.
Is it Avengers the biggest franchise?
Yeah.
But again, like if take Avengers, I love the Avengers films. I know people who think they're some of the worst films ever put to celluloid. So you know,
I absolutely love those films, because I think it's because in high school I used to read the comics constantly. Yeah. So when I saw them on film, I was like, oh my god. Oh my god! And when I saw the first interaction with Captain America, Iron Man, and Thor on film, I was like, "This is amazing. Yeah. This is exactly like the comics." Like, oh my god! Like
again, but you have the context of it as well. There's some people who weren't comic book fans who adore the films.
Yeah, that's me.
Who weren't comic book fans, and they just don't get it because they almost need that context to get it. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
Like I'm a huge Spider-Man film fan. I grew up loving Spider-Man, the comics.
Exactly the same here, yeah.
But I'll keep my mouth shut about the last 2 Spider-Man films. You know what I mean? You know what I mean? It's like, again, it's coming back to that metal elitism. It's because I'm such a big Spider-Man fan. I don't like the last 2 Spider-Man films. But you get some people who go, oh my God, they're my favourite Spider-Man films. Who am I to say you're wrong and I'm right?
Well, my experience of like superhero films, I was the person that like I never read any comic books. I went to go watch the first Avengers, and that was like my introduction to superheroes. But I've been like a massive fan ever since. But you know, when I speak to someone like Nathan who's read all the comics, like he does do this thing when he tends to like to spoil stuff because he knows stuff about the comics. He'll be like, oh yeah, Falcon and the Winter Soldier, this happens. I was like, you just spoiled everything. And he's like, yeah, but it might not happen that way. There's 2 different routes they can take. I'm just like, yeah, but they might follow one of those routes, and you just spoiled it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, I'm very annoying to like my friends who are into the comics, because like I know like all the little obscure stories they did in the 90s and stuff like that, because I've found the online versions and I've read them. Like I've just started reading them.
Yeah.
And you know, like the amount of times I'm like, Brad's like, oh, what do you think's gonna happen in the new Doctor Strange? I'm like, I know exactly what's going to happen in New Doctor Strange. There's been times where I've told Brad as I'm walking into like the cinema, what I think's going to happen, and at the end of it, he's turning around like, "How the fuck did you predict all that? How did you just know? How did you know?" He went, you know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh, because they're just mixed stories from here and there. So
it's weird. So I remember going to see Metallica with my brother. Hopefully this will make sense in a minute. Changing the subject, but it is related. Where my brother turned around to me and said, I'm not going to watch Metallica with you ever again. Because literally I would tell him what the next song was going to be before it happened.
I did that as well.
Stop it. And the reason I knew is because I knew what guitar they were using. They'd be past the guitar and I'm like, they're going to play Master of Puppets. He's like, shut up! And because I'm that much of a Metallica nerd, I was like, it's one of 3 songs they're going to play, but it's going to be this one. And it's like, how? Stop it!
I used to do like a similar thing.
Ever again.
Yeah, I used to do a similar thing, but like obviously not with the guitars, but I used to read like Setlist FM. And when I used to go to a gig with some of my friends, I'd be like, yep, they're going to play this next and this next and this next. Like, can you just not? Can you just like leave it a surprise?
It is one of those things where, again, it's the passionate side of me. I can't help it. Mm-hmm. It was the same way about metal elitism. They can't help slagging off bands. They think they're helping you out by saying, no, you avoid that band or don't listen to that album. It's like, well, you might actually really like that album if you just try and spill your guts out about why much you hate it. That person might actually quite like it. Same way that I can't help. They're going to play One now. Oh, shut up! It's like this musical Tourette's that comes out. I can't help it. But
that's what I'm like with Marvel films. It just spurts out, and then like I think I told Brad how I think it was gonna go in like Falcon and the Winter Soldier, and he went, "Never fucking tell me how you think something's gonna go ever again," because that spoiled the entire episode for him. Like he was sat there watching, going, "It's gonna go the exact way Nathan said." Like,
oh dear.
I think we're getting to sort of like the end point of the interview now. The way we kind of end this interview is, what advice would you give to a musician just starting out that you think they could learn from?
That's a good question. It's just one of those things where if you want to do it, do it. Don't go half-arsed into it. It was always one of those things for me where it was like, I'm going to be a musician. I don't know how or what kind of musician I'm going to be, but I'm going to do it. And I just put everything I could into it. And I think if you're passionate about anything in life, you will just find a way to do it. Even if you don't do it for a living or you don't get to play the big stages, that almost doesn't matter in a weird way. Like, don't get me wrong, I always wanted to play the big stages, wanted to play in a big band. I didn't think it was going to happen. I was doing it regardless. I was playing gigs 4 or 5 times a week with my bands just because I loved playing music. I was joining tribute bands and playing with those because I just genuinely loved playing the music. And I think that's what it is. If you have a genuine love for it, and if you're doing it to become rich and famous, you're doing it for the wrong reasons. I think basically all the big bands I've spoken to who are genuine and pretty massive, they've become massive almost by accident because they just loved what they did. Very, very rare have I met a band or musicians who strive to be rich and famous and then it worked. Does that make sense?
Yeah, 100%.
As a weird side effect of having the passion for what they did. It just happened to, their passion resonated with a lot of other people and they became big almost by accident. So I think that's what it comes down to, is if you're genuinely passionate about it, things happen. And if you work on your craft every day, be a nice person and just get out there and do the thing. The thing will happen.
That's really good advice. But yeah, thank you so much, Richard. Honestly, Cradle of Filth has been one of my favorite extreme metal bands for so long, and Hammer the Rich is actually one of the first extreme metal albums that actually brought me into the heavier side of the music. So yeah, cool. Loved it. Yeah, still bang that on all the time. Love Kryptonia, and I can't wait to see what you guys do next. And from what you've told me, it's going to be exciting. So can't wait.
Really excited. Whether people like it or not, it's going to be a different story. But it's going to be a lot of people who hate it. There's going to be a lot of people who love it. So it's going to be one of those albums. I'm looking forward to people finally hearing it.
Yeah, I'm really excited to hear it, and like I got a thank you like once again for coming on, because this has been like, I think, such a surreal like sort of experience for me and Brad, because you know, like we've spent years just like listening to Cradle and like geeking over the music and being like, this is fucking great, and to be able to sit down and talk to you about like one of our favorite bands, like and you know, a guitarist of our favorite band, it's just been insane for us. So thank you so much for your time and coming on to the podcast.
Yeah,
no worries, anytime.
No,
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
It's been a pleasure. See you in a bit.